In the English-speaking world, we're used to action heroes like Indiana Jones beating up the evil Nazees and stopping them before they use the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail for world domination. But did you ever wonder how Germans, the ones kind of being vilified, even under the historical context of the nation's dark past, actually thought about Indiana Jones? Specifically Raiders and Last Crusade? It's an interesting question, don't you think? As personally, I haven't spoken to many Germans online. While there's not really a language barrier anymore, given most Germans know the English language, nature dictates that we're more likely to form circles within what we know, rather than be multiculturalists and make friends of different backgrounds, ethnicities, and nationalities. Today, I wanted to answer the question of what Germany and its people thought of the Indiana Jones movies, especially the ones with the Nazees as the bad guys, as that's where they're directly represented in the main series. The Nazees are prominent antagonists in the series in general, but for this video, I'll be specifically discussing the movies. So let's begin. So first, let's get something straight. The Germany of today is a free, democratic, and multicultural nation, especially compared to its dark past under Silly Mustache Man. I suppose it is worth noting that there was previously the divide between West and East Germany, but that has more to do with the Cold War than it has to do with the Nazis. Germany allows all the Indiana Jones movies in their uncensored form to be watched by German audiences. This wasn't necessarily the case with video games, because legally, video games were seen as toys rather than art, and toys with unconstitutional symbolism, like the banned swastika, would have been banned in Germany. This is why we didn't get Wolfenstein in that country for the longest time. From what I understand, that part of German law has been relaxed, but when it comes to the movies, as long as it's not endorsing hate speech, it's fine. Germany after World War II has been very dedicated to denazification, after the horrors of the Holocaust and the war in general. German schools do not flatter the Nazis whatsoever, and the Allied invasion is seen as Liberation Day in fact. Now with all that being said, Indiana Jones on its own was met with critical acclaim in Germany, just like it is anywhere else. Great action, great story, great characters, but that's not quite what we're looking for. As the unfortunate historical bearers of one of history's most evil regimes, what did Germans have to say about the betrayal of the bad guys? Well, most of all of them agree that the Nazis are the bad guys, and deserve to be vilified in this story. However, there is a hint of resentment towards the somewhat satirical and over-the-top depiction of the Nazis. I went through a bunch of translated German language articles around this topic, and from what most of them say, they fully recognize the movies depicting the Nazis in the worst possible light and bringing all their worst aspects to the front and center. The racism, the authoritarianism, the lack of respect for history, etc. There were several historical inaccuracies pointed out, like the general disinterest in finding the Ark of the Covenant, given it was mostly seen as a Jewish relic, and well, Nazis thought that Jewish people were subhuman, and Silly Mustache Man's distaste for the occult compared to other Nazi leaders, but most seem to acknowledge that that was a liberty taken for the sake of the story. There were some complaints about how the film seemed to stereotype Nazis as the bad guys in general, with regard to Spielberg's satire, over realistic flaws and evils of the Nazis. Todt in particular was seen as a deliberately written psychopath, who joined the Nazis as a means to unleash his sadism legally, for lack of better words. In fact, a lot of German language articles and discussions really only gave hints on the stereotypes, as most of what was spoken about was the artistic value of Indiana Jones as a film series, seeing a hero rise above evil and give the evil fascists what they deserve, which of course is the appropriate response. But you gotta respect how Germans of today do not shy away from their dark history. You may have also noticed that a lot of German actors of today star in these kinds of movies and stories. As an example, while most of the original trilogy actors were from the United Kingdom when they were playing German characters, those like Emmerich Voss were played by actual German actors. And that seems to be the formula nowadays. Germans in any regard do not shy away from the stain that is the Nazi regime, German authors write stories with anti-fascist allegories, such as the dude who wrote the book that was adapted into the never-ending story. So in short, the answer is that the Germans see the vilification of the Nazis as a positive, or are indifferent either way. They fully understand the context of why Indy whacks these guys really hard, and in fact, cheer him on as he does so. There was little to no controversy, or even extended discussion of this sort of thing I could find online. The furthest it goes is criticism about the stereotypes, but with the understanding that the stereotypes existed to make the Nazis the archetypal villains of the story. So that's my short but sweet answer on how Germans perceive the Indiana Jones movies. Perhaps something more nuanced, like the German Empire in World War I, as depicted in Young Indy, is a more complicated question. But that wasn't the topic of this video. This answer may be a little underwhelming for many of you, but I wanted to make a series of videos going over the perceptions of different stories in different countries. How Eastern Europe sees Grand Theft Auto 4, how Russia sees the different Call of Duty games, especially the ones with Russia as the bad guys, how the Arabic world sees the first Assassin's Creed game, and maybe Italy with Assassin's Creed 2 and so on. I feel giving these people's perceptions of works created by mostly English-speaking Westerners will be extremely interesting to dive deep into, and I think it's quite the outside-the-box idea for videos. I may also do follow-ups on the Indian perception of Temple of Doom and the Russian perception of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. In fact, I'm speaking to an actual Russian who has given me a lot of perspective so far on the Eastern European mindset of various stories and gave me a lot of context for stuff like the Yugoslav wars, the legacy of the Soviet Union, etc. Although I still intend to do my own research too. I'm JJ Plagiarisms, and until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?
Under the mountain.